meeting the Atherton Rail Committee.
It is very difficult.
We'll start with a roll
because
call.
that's what
Ron?
happens when
Malcolm
presentations
Dudley?
driven,
Here.
You know, things go. When
Jack Ringman?
Here.
Hingham? Greg Conlon?
Here.
Paul Jones?
Here.
Scott Lane? Here. Is it Narissa? Narissa Dexter?
Here.
Jim Hands?
Jans.
Jans, sorry.
He's not here.
Okay.
He'll be late. He comes in from the city and he's a good.
Trains are always late.
They just don't stop right here.
That's right. He jumps off.
Alex Cake is
He's
not
not
here. Anthony Nguyen
Here.
and John
Malvich.
Malvich. I'm sorry if I mispronounced.
He's not here either, but we do have a quorum.
Okay.
So we'll open with public comments. If any of you would like to make comments, we have a massive public here tonight, but you're certainly welcome to speak.
Paul, can I interject so that we can actually all meet the new director,
Yes.
Oh,
Robert? I
fine.
mean, just the who's over there. I think that
Okay.
for people, and if he can say a little bit about himself, it would.
Sure. I'm Robert Ovadia. I'm the new director of public
Robert
works.
what?
Ovadia. O-V-A-D-I-A.
O-V-A-D.
I-A.
Body.
New director of public works. New to the city. Started yesterday. So.
Old timer.
So take it easy on him, Greg.
So I come to you most recently from the city of Concord. I was there for almost 4.5 years as their city engineer. Prior to that, I spent about 14.5 years with the city of Daly City, rising up through the engineering ranks and left them as their acting city engineer. Daly City is just south of San Francisco. Concord is over a bridge, through a tunnel, through the woods, over to Grandma's house.
I was trying to think of the city council members, but some Daily City, that's all I was thinking.
This is
So that's Alex K.
Yes,
Okay.
we met earlier.
Yes. Welcome. Thank you. It's a pleasure for me to be with you tonight, and looking forward to a good meeting.
Welcome.
I
Thank
was
you.
telling Robert it's a pleasure to have him as a full-time member of the Atherton staff. The last full-time member we had, Duncan Jones, was a real winner, so we're expecting him to be that or more. All right, the next item is the approval of minutes. Are there any corrections, changes, additions to the minutes that you'd like to make?
Yes, I was here, and Ellen wasn't. I think I said the exact same thing last time.
Okay,
The roll call.
yes.
So I'm gonna apologize.
Not a
Name
big deal.
Name?
That's Anthony Wynn.
Anthony. Okay. So we'll correct the record to reflect that.
Any other corrections to minutes? Do we have a motion for approval?
So
As
moved.
corrected. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Takes care of the minutes. We have no presentation, so we'll get right on to the main screen and the principal course. We have with us tonight Ben Trebosis, who will give us an update on the high-speed rail activity. And Ben, why don't you come up and sit at the end of the table? So
Good evening. Thank you, Paul. Before we start, I want to introduce Morgan Galley, who helps lead our community outreach in the Peninsula Quarter from San Francisco to San Jose. I, again, am Ben Trebosis. I'm the Northern California Regional Director for the High Speed Rail Authority, and I'm leading the project in Northern California. And I just want to provide a brief update on where we are with the program and some upcoming milestones that we can anticipate. Robert, welcome. I grew up in Daly City, so it's great that you served that community for a long time. is that on Canterbury Avenue off of Callan Ceremony. So first and foremost is, I think, an important point to make is that we have new leadership at the High Speed Rail Authority. As you probably know, we have a new CEO. Our new Chief Executive Officer is Brian Kelly, recently of California State Transportation Authority fame. He has served since 2013 as our State Secretary of Transportation, leading a 38,000 person division in the state of California, which includes the High Speed Rail Authority, the Department of Motor Vehicles, Caltrans, CHP, the Office of Traffic Safety, and so on. All of the transportation components in California were under Brian's leadership, and he has come to the authority to succeed Jeff Morales in the role as Chief Executive Officer. Joining him next week, in fact, they'll be starting Monday, and Brian started his tenure on the 1st of February. We'll have 2 additional members of the leadership joining the team on Monday. Pam Mizukami, who will come on board as our Chief Deputy, and Pam has significant depth and breadth of administrative experience with the state of California, most recently having led the Department of Motor Vehicles in that capacity, and she'll be joined by Joe Hedges, who comes to us from the state of Washington and has most recently led the Alaska Way Viaduct project in Seattle, which is a very large infrastructure project in its own right, and has had a myriad of challenges that Joe helped resolve, and is now well on its way to completion, and it's become quite a successful project in the Pacific Northwest. So that leadership team will be in full force as of next week, and all prepared to take on the many challenges that we face over the next couple of years, not just aimed at completing the construction in the Central Valley, but also to complete the planning in the other project sections throughout California, in both Northern and Southern California. So with that in mind, as a roadmap to complete the project or move the project forward, one of Mr. Kelly's first orders of business will be to complete and release the update of the high-speed rail business plan. As you may recall, every 2 years the authority is responsible to submit to the governor and the legislature an update of our business plan. The last business plan was in 2016. The new business plan will come out this year, and it's expected to be out by the first week of March. So first week of March, the business plan will be out, and that will really show the way for the next 2 years. The business plans are really snapshots in time, but the intention of the plan is to, as clearly as possible for both policymakers and communities, to provide a broad understanding of what the next steps for high-speed rail are going to be. What the priorities are going to be for that 2-year period, what the funding and challenges and opportunities are for the program going forward, and this will include every element of the program, from the 119 miles that are currently under construction in the Central Valley to the completion of the environmental documents in both Northern and Southern California, to the ongoing utilization of cap and trade funds to complete the program, and the interest in obtaining other funds to complete the program into the future. As you know, we will have a new governor by the end of this year, and a new administration will certainly have their own perspective on the project and how it should go forward. And Mr. Kelly is certainly well positioned, having spent over 20 years serving the Senate in the legislature. He was the lead staffer, the chief consultant for the Senate President Pro Tem and the Senate Transportation Committee for over 20 years, and served a number of members, including Senators Bill Lockyer, Don Parada, Darrell Steinberg, among others. So he's, yes, sir?
Will that plan also give a snapshot of the ongoing work to completion?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Paul, if we got this videotaped, because I don't see it, I just wondered
No, it's being taped, yes.
where, I don't see it.
Usually the screen is on, I think that's what.
Okay.
That's what, right.
Because I think what he's saying, I like to sit in the community to see it and hear it. It's very
Well,
important.
that's quite
It's
true.
above my level, it's above my pay grade.
You can
I
handle
have the machine on, I didn't know about turning on the screen.
it. I want to give you some video time here to.
Yeah, but as I
Will
like
you
to
repeat what you just said?
as I like to say,
Oh, there goes the
as I like to say, I've got a face for radio. So I don't know if that's such a good thing.
I think the microphone. Oops. It's around your foot. Actually, it's around your foot.
Oh,
This is the session in process.
Yeah, there it is. Okay.
got it now?
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
He hasn't been trained on this yet. It's that second day. Got another week.
Should bring back Michael to get it up and running.
That's the TVs.
Well, if you can't do it, you can't do it, but I thought it'd be good to give him an
Well,
opportunity.
it'll be in the minutes, I think.
That's right.
Well, I know, but the video would be good for the community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It says it's sessions in process, it just doesn't show it there, so let's just.
You think it is in process?
It says.
It says it is. Okay, well, I
Okay.
just wanted to.
Well,
No, I
If you
appreciate
so
that.
either
Greg.
have it or we won't have it.
Yeah, so, to your point, Paul, the point, one of the many objectives that the business plan is aimed at fulfilling rather, is to answer just those kinds of questions. What's the progress of the plan? What are the next steps of the plan? What are the anticipated schedules that the plan is embodying? What are the funding levels, both availability and needed funding? One of the things that I'm sure it will describe is the presence of our early train operator. As you may recall, we have procured an early train operator to help us provide an operator's perspective on how to develop the high-speed rail system in California. We have been joined by Deutsche Bahn, the German team, who will serve as essentially our early train operator consulting team and help us ensure that as the engineering is being completed, that it includes an operator's eye, that it's not just about the structure, it's about ensuring that those structures and the systems that are being put in place operate in the way that we need them to once the trains are ready to begin revenue service. So Deutsche Bahn is on board, and they will have a tremendous amount of input into the development of the project as we go, as we move the program forward, both the construction and the ongoing development of the program. In the Bay Area, as you may,
What is their relationship with you?
we did an RFP, and 5 teams submitted. Deutsche Bahn, there was a Spanish team, a German team, a British team, among others, and Deutsche Bahn was selected from this international team of train operators. So we have contracted with Deutsche Bahn, and their
Are
job.
they part of the government, or are they a consulting firm?
They're a consulting. Well, Deutsche Bahn is its own entity in Germany. They have contracted with us, working for the state of California. So they're a consultant to us.
I see, consulting relationship.
Now, having said that, that's how you actually bring up a great point, Greg, is that the responsibility of the High Speed Rail Authority has always been to build the statewide program. The day-to-day operation of the system was always intended and is intended to be operated by a concessionaire. When the time comes, a company like Deutsche Bahn or Japan Rail East or SNCF or any other international operator can bid to be California's operator when we are at that point in the development of the program. So it may well be Deutsche Bahn, it might be somebody else, but that's the intention structurally of how the program will work, is that at some point there will be a concessionaire who will operate the statewide program.
Just one thought on them, because Germany is the only country, I think, that has a 6% grade on their high-speed rail. and that's enough to get over the grapevine. So if just for whatever, I'll leave that with you, and I don't know where I got that, but I've been studying it.
You know, that's news to me. I'll have to follow that up. I was not aware of that.
Yeah, well, that's not.
Excuse me,
Yes, sir.
were France or Japan or any other countries?
Yes, well, as I mentioned, there was Deutsche Bahn, there was a French consortium, a British consortium, a Chinese team, and the Japanese did not submit, and SNCF, the French team, also submitted, and Deutsche Bahn was selected.
Chinese?
The Chinese, yeah. So in Northern California, as you know, we are completing 2 environmental documents, one from San Francisco to San Jose and the second from San Jose to Merced to connect to the construction that's currently underway in the Central Valley. The schedule for those environmental clearances have shifted, and in the San Francisco to San Jose project section on the peninsula here, the schedule is as follows. We expect to get to a preferred alternative which identifies those discrete elements of the Peninsula Corridor, acknowledging that we will be operating within the friendly confines of the Caltrain corridor, fully electrified once Caltrain electrification is completed. But it will also identify things like the location of a maintenance facility on the peninsula. The site we're looking at, as many of you know, is in Brisbane. The necessity for and location of, if it's deemed necessary, passing tracks along the peninsula. Any additional mitigations that may include things like 4-quadrant gates at all of our at-grade crossings, any modifications to the stations at Diridon and Millbrae, the connection to SFO, or in San Francisco, where initially, until we make that downtown extension connection to the Transbay Terminal, we'll be likely using 4th and King, unless that connection is made in advance of trains running to San Francisco. So those elements would be shown in a preferred alternative. Then, yes, sir.
Will you be operating any high-speed rail trains over the Caltrain tracks as they are electrified before you make any of the modifications you will have in the ER?
No, sir. Because the likely
years between when they come up and when you come
yeah,
up.
the timing, honestly, Paula, I don't think will work out. That Caltrain electrification will be completed, and we'll have to. Caltrain electrification will be completed before, likely, we finish our complete environmental review. So once that's done, then we have to complete the improvements as a follow-on to those to electrification. So any modifications would come on subsequent to that in all likelihood. Now, we may be able to catch up a little bit, but just the way the timing lays out right now, I don't anticipate that we'd be able to make much headway as a component of their program.
That creates a problem there.
Well, that's
There are
been,
those
yeah,
very large foundations.
yeah, it's been an ongoing challenge, and happily, we have a terrific working relationship with the Caltrain team, and we're being very collaborative. Jim Hartnett and his team, his leadership team, have been tremendous partners in both advancing electrification and anticipating the future needs of high-speed rail in a blended corridor, and we're working together on exactly what those impacts that you suggest may be, as well as determining what the future operation and capacity of the corridor will be. Because at the end of the day, it's not, as I've said many times, it's not about high-speed rail or commuter trains, it's about capacity and increasing the capacity of the Caltrain corridor so that we can get more people off of 101 and get them riding trains. So that's what we're trying to arrive at and have it work in a way that works for all the communities along the Peninsula Corridor. So we'll be continuing to do that.
What was the date you said the EIR?
So looking at
2023 or?
summer of 2018 for the preferred alternative.
Okay.
We won't see a draft environmental document until the end of 2019, and then a final environmental document for that part of the corridor until the end of 2020.
Okay.
So, just for your information, the schedule for the San Jose to Merced section is a little bit ahead of that. The preferred alternative will likely come about the same time. but we'll have a draft by the end of this year for San Jose to Merced and a final by the end of 2019. So San Jose to Merced is about a year ahead of San Francisco to San Jose.
Has the Pacheco Pass tunnel been finalized yet?
Largely, the tunnel alignment runs virtually parallel to Highway 152. There's about a 13.5 mile tunnel through the pass to the north of the San Luis Reservoir.
Just north of the reservoir.
Yes, sir. That will connect to the Central Valley Y, the connection to the Central Valley construction, about 8 miles east of Los Banos is where that will be. So those are the environmental schedules as they are today. They'll be reflected in the business plan. We're continuing, as I mentioned, to work with Caltrain on all of those discrete components of high-speed rail as they'll come online. Caltrain, as you know, is in the midst of developing their own business plan, and some of the work that we're going to do and be a part of, including improvements to things like the Diridon Station. As you know, there's a significant amount of discussion going on around the integration of all the various modes at Diridon. We'll have more modal connections at Diridon than even at Trans Bay. There's this little company called Google that's talking about putting some buildings in and around the Diridon Station. So that's going to be a significant conversation, and in fact the City of San Jose, as you may have seen, has just established a community group to marshal that effort forward and ensure that the community is meaningfully engaged in that discussion. And so we will very much be part of that discussion as well in an ongoing way. In the same way, to the north in San Francisco, we now, as you may know, have a seat on the Trans-Bay Joint Powers Authority Board. I serve on behalf of the High Speed Rail Authority on the Trans-Bay Joint Powers Authority Board. So as a future investor in the downtown extension and a tenant at the future Trans-Bay Transit Center, the authority is fully engaged in the ongoing expansion and operation of the Trans-Bay Transit Center. So
Do they have any source of money for the tunnel yet?
they're still working on that. They have a plan. They don't have every dollar identified yet, but I think Mark Zabane, the executive director, and the board will begin to see it in the coming months. I think they've got a good roadmap for how to get to the funding for that phase 2 part of the downtown extension. Happily, bus service is likely going to open by the middle of this year, so the transit center itself will begin meaningful operations and revenue service, and that's been a long time coming, so it'll be exciting to see that project open up. Our community outreach, which is something that you will begin to see more of as the year goes on, what at the moment is really predicated on the release of our business plan. We didn't want to get out into the community until the business plan was completed, so we had the latest information that we could provide to the community. So as I said, the business plan will be out the first week of March. We will hit the road as soon as that's out, and in fact, Morgan and the team are working on scheduling those dates now, finding venues and identifying dates for us to have community working group meetings, which, as you may recall, are our drill down sessions where we really get into the virtual nuts and bolts of the system and give both appointed community members and the public at large an opportunity to ask those very detailed questions. We will have open houses that are much more general in nature and allow the broader community to get an update of the program and get a better understanding of where we're at. And we will also continue to meet regularly with our elected bodies, and we've presented to several of the Peninsula Community City Councils over the last year, and we will continue to do that in the coming years on a regular basis so that both staff and policymakers of each respective city are kept apprised of the progress of the project, and they're able to get any questions that they have answered so they can be responsive to their constituents as well. So that's the Reader's Digest version of where our program is. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have. Yes, sir.
how do you sit on the platform height issue? We look at that, of course, we sit in on the JPB meetings here for Caltrain and have watched that development. Do you plan to have high-speed rail service on more than Fortune King, Millbrae, and Dearden?
Not at the moment. No.
So that actually you could have separate platforms in those stations.
And at those discrete stations, yes, and that's part of the discussion that we're having. And in order, our goal, again, because of the timing of each effort, Caltrain's electrification effort and our program, we were unable to sync up our collective efforts. So our goal throughout, from the outset of the development of both projects, and as a significant investor in the Caltrain electrification project, the state wanted to ensure that we weren't precluding our ability to have high platforms. So the initial step that we took toward that was the accommodation of dual doors on the Caltrain vehicles that are being procured. So there'll be an opportunity for those vehicles to serve both high and low platforms if ultimately, from an operational standpoint, we arrive at an operations plan, an operating plan that accommodates that use, that it makes sense from a capacity standpoint for us to use all 3 platforms and all 6 platform faces at the Transbay Transit Center to accommodate better flexibility for all the trains if Caltrain would use those high doors. Or as we go through the investigation, we may determine that, you know what, a more effective operation would be provided by mini highs for high-speed rail at those lower platforms rather than having common level boarding, but you still get the same bang for your buck and better circulation and those sorts of elements. So those are the questions that we're trying to answer. But at minimum, by having that door accommodation on those vehicles, it doesn't prevent us from doing that. It doesn't force us to go back, take those trains out of line, and reconstruct them in some way. It's in a position where we could do that in the future if that's where we arrive.
Well, of course, Caltrain has paid a very heavy price in putting those dual platforms, both in terms of capacity, handling disabled persons, and a whole series of
Sure.
problems. that make
Which is
it
why
very
we're
awkward.
trying to find a better solution, yes.
And Sadler's building the cars.
Yeah.
So it's an issue that has not been satisfactorily resolved yet. I hope it can be.
Well, all I can say, Paul, is that we're working with Caltrain on that in an ongoing way.
Good. Well, I'm glad to hear that.
Mr. Connell?
Yeah, I really want to thank you for being here, and I was pleasantly surprised. I hadn't looked at the agenda, and I just think that it's good that you're trying to reach out to us, since we've been the major thorn in your side for this area, and I think any communication we have with you is good. So
We think so too.
and the stretch on 152, is that going to be done by 2019? The EIR, was that part of that Modesto to San Jose?
Yes, sir. Yeah. So from there's a little place called Carlucci Road, almost exactly 8 miles east of Los Banos, where the 2 projects will come together. So from there,
8 miles?
8 miles east of Los Banos, and so from there to Gilroy is part of that Merced to San Jose
The
section.
high-speed rail will be within 8 miles of Los Banos? The high-speed rail
Yeah.
tracks will be within 8 miles of
Well,
Los Banos?
they'll go closer.
Oh, it's closer than 8 miles. We're in Los Banos. We're not through
I
downtown.
thought you were over in Fresno and
Yeah,
Modesto.
yeah, we are. Yeah, but you have to go east to get there. The line is going east-west through Los
Oh,
Banos.
you're saying it's going east?
Yeah, it's
Not
headed
line
east.
going east?
Yeah, it's headed east. So
Okay.
where we connect to the construction in the Central Valley, where it makes the left turn into the Bay Area, the spot where we connect to them is 8 miles east of Los Banos. I wish I had a map so I could give you the reference, but we connect in Los Banos with that line, and then from there it parallels 152 through the Pacheco Pass, and then eventually past Casa de Fruta and into Gilroy.
So Gilroy is where it's first stopped?
Yeah, and there'll be a station in Gilroy.
And then you could connect to Caltrains at that point if it wasn't done to the city?
Well, one of the many things that we're working on, and that will certainly have a potential impact on the alignment between San Jose and Gilroy, is talking to the Union Pacific Railroad that owns that right-of-way from just south of the Tamian Station in San Jose all the way to Gilroy. And they've been reluctant in the past to have any passenger service on their right-of-way. And our CEO, Mr. Kelly, and our board chair, Dan Richard, have initiated conversations with Union Pacific with a mind toward trying to find a way that we could potentially use that right-of-way and work with Union Pacific to ensure that their freight customers are being served and that their resources are being utilized effectively while being able to accommodate additional passenger service. We're a long way away from determining whether or not that's a possibility, but that certainly would be a game changer in terms of things like electrification from San Jose all the way to Gilroy and the kind of right-of-way that would be necessary to accommodate high-speed rail service down to Gilroy. So we're...
Can you use eminent domain in the state of California?
No, we can't do that with a federal, the freight railroads have federal protections that can't be superseded by state eminent domain. We don't have that ability.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's my understanding that Union Pacific will continue to use the right-of-ways into San Jose, despite the fact that they're vacating their trackage rights
Yeah.
on the main line of Caltrain.
Right, and right now Caltrain is negotiating with the short haul operator to provide that service. If there was an accommodation that could be achieved from San Jose to Gilroy, the short haul operator would just go a little farther, I would imagine, and so you can provide a similar service there. But again, it would have...
There will be more freight service on that line because that's a higher density line.
Right, right, but it would also allow us to really minimize community impacts. As I said, expand service south of San Jose, increase the level of service to those southern stations, Blossom Hill, Capitol, Morgan Hill, San Martin, Gilroy, and minimize the necessity for right-of-way for a completely separate high-speed service, while still accommodating in the same way that blended service in the peninsula would, accommodating high-speed service on the same track.
Well, that would be ideal.
Yeah, so I'm heartened by the notion that our friends at Union Pacific are willing to at least consider it, and if we can come to an agreement, it would serve everybody, and we'll see what we can do. Yes, sir.
Will the short haul operator be able to support a 2% grade? I know some communities are thinking of doing some grade separation. There's some Measure B money in Santa Clara, and certainly it would ease their construction if they didn't have to keep a 1% grade. But then
Sure.
do 2%.
I think the short hauls are more agreeable to a grade increase than some of the UP facilities, just by virtue of what they're operating, what they're hauling.
Can UP kind of veto that and say, we're not going to let you do 2%, or?
I don't know if they can. Again, it depends on what sort of agreement is established between the operators. But that would certainly be a consideration. If there are grade subs that are completed, we've got to ensure that the trains can operate on them. So.
Palo Alto, their council just made grade separation one of their priorities this year. And I know Mountain View and Sunnyvale already think, they may not be doing like full grade separation, but doing other things that will make sure there's no more road crossing.
Sure. On that score, actually, there's quite a lot going on. As you know, the Santa Clara County measure accommodated $900 million that is committed to grade separations in those three cities, in Palo Alto, Sunnyvale, and Mountain View. Mountain View has already moved to close Castro Street and make that more of a pedestrian thoroughfare and provide pedestrian access under Central Expressway and close that to traffic. That's a significant move, both in terms of their business district, their transit center, and just generally along the peninsula to close one of those grade crossings is a significant move by a local community. They are, as you correctly point out, looking at ways to grade separate Rainsdorf. So they've talked to us about that. As you know, we're working with the City of San Mateo and the San Mateo County Transportation Authority on the 25th, 28th, and 31st Avenue crossings, which are now under construction happily, so those are underway. City of Sunnyvale, in fact, we had a similar meeting with the city at a study session that they had just a couple of weeks ago on the possibility of grade separating Avenue in Sunnyvale. So that's something they're very much interested in. And we've had ongoing discussions with the City of Palo Alto about their interest in grade separating. So as those funds come forward and get distributed to those local communities, I'm sure we'll be hearing from them about what kind of a role the authority can play with them. And that's why the San Mateo project was so important from the authority's perspective, because as I've mentioned to the local policymaker group and the Caltrain board in the past, that it served as, I think, a very effective template for pursuing grade separations in the Peninsula Corridor. As you know, we had at the outset 41 crossings that needed to be grade separated in order to have a fully separated corridor. On average, a grade separation, it starts at about $150 million and goes up from there. So back of the envelope calculations put that at about a $5 billion proposition, not to mention the time it would take to construct those on an operating railroad. So the challenge is significant. And where we can find the opportunity, as we did in San Mateo, to partner with local communities where there's local investment and local interests are expressed. The city, in partnership with Caltrain, completed their own environmental document. The city invested funds, the county invested funds, and the authority had the opportunity to be, the state of California really had an opportunity to become a funding partner in that effort. Wasn't forced to take on the entire burden of either that discrete project or the entire corridor. Having said that, part of one of the many goals, I should say, of the environmental clearance is to identify those areas where, as a mitigation, work like that needs to be accomplished because of the potential impacts of the volume of trains that we have in the corridor. And that's part of what we're trying to evaluate. Can we, in fact, with 4 quadrant gates at all the crossings, operate blended service in a way that still provides a level of safety and provides mitigation for traffic impacts and the like that is sufficient within the law? Or do we need to do something more? And what is that something more? And that's what the document is going to help us do.
Well, quad gates are only $1 million or $2 million. Grade separation, $150 million.
Right. Quite a difference. Yes, sir.
Speaking of safety, have you had any discussions yet with Caltrain about interoperability with a positive train control system? So,
yes.
For example, CBOS has been a disaster.
Yeah.
CBOS is their responsibility, but that
Right.
said, you have interoperability
Yes.
responsibilities.
Yes.
So
In fact,
And the short line operator has its own system too, because they'll still run a diesel.
Right, but the key to that entire discussion is laying a foundation that accommodates their ability to talk to one another. We don't necessarily have to have the same hardware and software. They just need to be able to communicate, and that's a requirement of ours. The FRA won't allow us to run our trains unless we have that ability to communicate and interoperate with the commuter system within the confines of their corridor. So we have been, and we will continue to work with the Caltrain team on solving their CBOS problem and ensuring that the system that's in place is one that we can adapt to when it comes time to put our trains in the corridor.
Well,
Yes,
this
sir.
accident in South Carolina is
Sorry?
another black eye for the
Yeah. I was just in
most unfortunate.
I was just in Tacoma the day the Sound Transit jumped the track. So I'm very sensitive to those kinds of occurrences. No, they really don't. And then it's unfortunate. You had a question?
Who's developing the 2018 business plan, and who's developing the environmental reports? Are they consultants?
No, our staff, authority staff, with some, assistance from our project management team, WSP, who is our lead program management team, is developing the business plan. The environmental documents are being completed by HNTV. They're the consultant team that was selected to complete both documents.
Who is WSP?
They are formerly Parsons Brinkerhoff. They were purchased by WSP, which is an international company. They are our lead consulting agency on the entire program.
And HNTV is for the
Environmental
EIR?
clearance, yeah.
Does
Yeah, they're a
WSP
sub-consultant.
stand for anything?
Sorry?
Does WSP stand for anything?
It does, but can you tell me what WSP stands for?
I'm still learning.
And she works for them, so.
Somebody's initials.
No more questions.
Yeah.
It's a Canadian
The
company.
900
It
million
is,
in Palo,
that's correct.
the 900 million in Palo Alto, is there trenching envisioned there someplace?
Well, I know that the city has entertained ideas of trenching. One of the many challenges to the corridor and grade crossings generally is that we can't, for those of us old enough to remember, make it into an e-ticket. We've got to find a way to run the trains in as straight a line as we possibly can. So having a grade in Palo Alto affects their neighboring cities and what happens in those neighboring
Well,
cities.
Ravenswood could do it, and then we could just bring it on up.
Well, again, a trench from a cost standpoint is significantly more expensive than an elevated rail structure or finding a way to drop the roadways in some meaningful way and keep the.
It's not as expensive as 150 million for those grade separations.
Well, I'm using the San Bruno station as a barometer, and that was inexpensive by comparison.
Well, that actually was more than one street though, so you could, even though.
Well, I'll use San Mateo. 28th, 31st, and 25th are 65 million is what we arrived at.
Per.
No, for that total
Oh,
project.
for the total project. Okay.
So those are fairly simple crossings because the rail's going over, and the streets are going underneath. So you're dropping.
There will be about as high as San Carlos and Belmont.
Yeah, it wouldn't be higher than that. Yeah.
Well, we certainly support a trench from Palo Alto to Redwood City.
There are folks who would support a trench from San Francisco to LA. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to figure out how to do that.
Well, when I was on the Transportation Commission, we went 20 miles for 1.5 billion. From the port of Long Beach to downtown LA, $1.5 billion for 3 tracks for 20 miles. So
The
it's,
Alameda Corridor.
yeah.
Yeah.
That was a couple of years ago.
Yeah, it's a
but
couple
I'm
years
not
ago.
that- I'm not that old.
Yes, sir.
Has there been any recent tests trying to determine whether you have enough passing track mileage to pass Caltrain without having to slow down Caltrain?
Yeah, the recommendation that the options that we're including in our environmental clearance include a 6-mile stretch from roughly 9th Ave in San Mateo to just north of Whipple. And 4 tracks in that section absolutely would accommodate the operation of the trains. What we're working with Caltrain on is to determine whether or not we need passing tracks at all to accommodate the operation of the trains. And it's a discussion, not really a debate, it's a determination of, do you solve the problem through infrastructure by having the physical passing track opportunity, or do you solve the problem, as many European systems do, operationally? How you run the trains, how you schedule your trains, how you move your fleet around. And that's what we're trying to arrive at, is an operating scenario that can accommodate the unfettered operation, and it includes in perturbed situations when you've got a broken down train or a medical emergency or someone who's stuck at the platform, and provide a scenario where your system can recover quickly so that you can get back to regular service as quickly as possible. That's really the problem that we have to solve to. And you can solve it one of those 2 ways. We're trying to determine what the best way for the corridor and future corridor capacity is, so we can build to that.
Is there being an update on the simulation that STL did in 2012?
Yeah, that we're working with a company called SMA, and they're a Swiss company who is very well versed in establishing operating plans, and both we and Caltrain are working together with SMA on landing on those operating options. And when we get closer to something that resembles a working plan, then we'll start coming out to the community and getting perspectives on that operating.
Well, that's important, because that work
Opportunity.
was well done, but it was very preliminary.
Oh, yeah, this is much more in-depth.
You just can't.
This is much more in-depth,
say too
yeah.
much on that.
Right.
Good.
And the schedule's not gonna be worth anything if the level boarding isn't done, because right now Caltrain has to budget time, assuming there's at least one person who needs access to the train. And right
Sure.
now, if they have two, that they have to stop for a longer period of time, their schedule is basically broken.
Yeah.
Okay.
Had enough questions?
I never have enough questions. This is fun for me. I like this. Yes, sir.
When high-speed rail begins operations, which I guess are still scheduled for 2029?
Ballpark, yeah. The business plan will lay out a more accurate current snapshot of when that might be, but that's still certainly what we're shooting for.
What will be the speeds between San Francisco and San Jose?
110.
110.
Yes, sir.
And you'll have to have the quad gates, huh?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Or the extended islands, which they're now Caltrain's starting to put in
Mhm.
Santa Clara and San Jose.
Right.
Yeah,
So that's an alternative to quad gates.
that is true.
Not at Watkins, though.
Not, well, no, you
Yeah.
Or at,
you
actually,
can't
or
do that at
Yeah.
Watkins because of Station Lane there.
Right.
Other
Any other
questions?
question?
By golly. Well, thank you.
Well, thank you all, and to your earlier point, I'm happy to do this on a regular basis. This is as valuable for us as I hope it is to you all, and we want to continue this conversation. This information is vital to you, and your feedback is vital to us. So please don't hesitate to have us join you again in the very near future to talk about the business plan.
Well, we certainly won't, and thank you, Morgan, for coming down and looking at our spacious quarters here.
Anytime,
Great.
yeah.
We're delighted. to
Thank you,
have
Ben.
Thank you, Karen. Appreciate it. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Yeah. Wait a minute, Robert. Tell him he's gonna correct.
Bye.
Take care.
Good night.
Good night.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the update of the.
Paul, could we talk a minute about the comments and what we just heard?
Yeah, you like.
Because I think the first time I sensed that maybe they're gonna have a chance to get this thing done. And I've never had that feeling before, just from his presentation. If they can really beat those
He's very
deadlines.
glib.
Well,
You didn't notice his nose getting longer and longer?
I think they still have the money problem.
Everything is moving out. The EIR was supposed to have been done the end of 2017. This is what they told us 2 years ago. Now it's going to be done in 2020.
It's quite a difference.
Everything is rolling downhill.
And when the EIR is completed, that's when the lawsuits can be filed. So they haven't even seen a lot of the lawsuits that could go against the EIRs that get.
Details.
Well,
And that hasn't reflected what the outcome might be of the state audit that the legislature is ordering.
Say again, Jack?
But
That progress that you're feeling so optimistic about, I think is going to be influenced by the outcome of the audit that the legislature is planning of a high-speed rail authority.
what are they planning in August, did you say?
Audit.
Audit.
Yeah.
Audit their
So-
whole operation.
Jim Beal is asking for, he's a transportation committee head, I think in the Senate, and he's asking for an audit that the Republicans have been asking
Mhm.
for a while. So it looks like it might, since he's the chairman, it looks like it might actually happen. So we'll see.
Well, the word I got was that the chairman of the
Transportation,
audit
audit committee.
committee is going to retire by the end of the year.
Okay.
So this is her swan song. So we may get an honest report out of this.
Okay.
But do you get the feeling that the grade separation is going, the dirty business for grade separation is now being transferred to the cities, and that you can actually feel that there could be a high-speed system between San Jose and San Francisco? Do you get that feeling?
I get the feeling that they're doing a better job of coordinating with other agencies, that they've recognized that deficiency. But at the same time, just looking at the news, the likelihood that it's gonna happen is lower simply because the amount of money available is lower and the needs for money are higher. So,
Well,
so it can both be true.
And the number of things hanging fire, they're up here boring holes and putting foundations for electrification poles, while all these people are talking about grade separations and other modifications. And high-speed rail is sitting over there saying, well, we'll straighten this curve and we'll add a passing track here. And all that is gonna totally invalidate the work that California is doing.
Being done,
I picked up on that. So your question was spot on.
Paul, could you repeat what you had said earlier about the depth of the foundation just for the two smaller outside poles?
The foundations they're putting in for the single track catenaries are 3 feet in diameter and 20 feet deep with 1 inch steel reinforcing rod.
20?
That's for the short poles.
5.9
You
meters.
never get those out.
That's for the short poles.
Has that issue of the height of the poles been resolved?
No,
And as you
Are they
remember,
gonna dig the potholes before it's resolved or after?
oh, before. And as you remember, Mr. Jean Linguan sat here, and it is on tape. He did say, the one thing he did say was that although the expected anticipated diameter for the larger poles, the 50% taller poles, was only expected to be 42 inches, the foundations were, and I quote, much deeper. But he doesn't know specific, much deeper than 20 feet.
I think, based on what I think I recall in a conversation with them, is that they will be doing test boring to determine the depth, even though it does say that depth, but it may vary based on jurisdiction and depth boring.
well, I hope that's true because it's an awful lot of concrete if nothing else.
In light of these accidents, where is the positive train control for all this? I mean, is that on target someplace?
No, it's a great big mystery. They keep moving the deadline back. The deadline is this December 31st at the moment
Of this year?
of this year, of which it is only February now. We are in a new year.
But is that part of the electric
It's
electrification?
That's an
No, it's
FRA requirement.
It's an independent
But they
requirement.
moved it back from.
Everyone has to follow this, not just electric.
They have to have it.
And there's not a lot of positive train control in service yet. I don't know how much is there, but every time something like this accident comes up, it occurs that, oh, yeah, we're working on that, but it isn't installed yet.
And then
It's
they-
installed, but it's not working.
And that's what they said.
That's the
And that's what
Caltrain's
they said
problem.
was a failure in the most recent accident, is the positive train control system.
Yeah.
So didn't they say it was non-existent?
Which one?
That was the problem. It was non-existent and
It
non-operative.
wasn't, I had it, it didn't work, it was non-existent.
Non-existent, and that's what they say the requirements are supposed to be met. As you know, they keep pushing that date. Doesn't make sense, but
The one in the East Coast, you mean, is that the one actually you're talking about?
Washington too, right?
Yeah.
and it's unfortunate.
Same thing.
I will
Washington,
tell you
same
at
thing.
the policy setter level, the CBOS system hasn't had an update. There just isn't any answers related to it, and you know how important it is. The more we see accidents, the more we want to know, right?
Well, nothing has been done to that for 2 years, has it?
They're working on it.
That's what they keep saying.
They're still working on it.
But they have nothing to, there's no progress to.
This is Caltrain's now.
Yeah.
Caltrain,
Yeah.
And there's no money either.
They've been,
Not
they've
only-
been working on CBOS for 15 years anyway.
It's their own system.
But now they've hired the one consultant
They
that's
haven't-
actually installed the system.
That
It
doesn't work.
doesn't happen to work.
Balfour
But-
Beatty,
Yeah.
they don't know anything about CBOS. Their system is totally different.
Totally.
Was there anything we could do to nudge them,
To do what?
threaten them,
To do what?
More on the FRA.
if they don't?
Yeah.
No, if they
They're
don't,
gonna really listen to that.
if they don't
to
get it,
Atherton.
if they don't get it done by, or some milestone done, then we would do something. Slow the traffic down to 15 miles an hour through Atherton.
Well, they've extended the requirement date for, obviously, as you know, for the CBOS system, positive train could both be installed. They just haven't answered. They could all of a sudden be done tomorrow. I couldn't tell you that.
Well, no, but if we're sitting here as a community, and we know that that the positive train control is not working, and we have all these accidents, there's nothing wrong with us slowing those trains down to 15 miles an hour as they go through Atherton.
But the positive train control system is not a requirement now, because that's a requirement that's on top of the existing controlled system that's already in play related to the gates and so on.
I don't care about the regs, I'm just saying, you gotta give them a nudge. You slow them down to 15 miles an hour, they'll do
Right.
something.
Well, you can't legally do that.
Well, I think you can, as a community, you have the power under the Constitution, the police force.
Well, speak to the mayor, maybe he has some comments on that.
Well, yeah, Greg, we'll talk later.
Well, no, but
Form a
I'm
change.
I'm an attorney that studies quite often the Constitution, and you have the power. If it has to do with safety, your community has absolute jurisdiction. So if you say you gotta slow it down to 15 until you get the positive train control running, you have that power. Now, they can argue and take it to court and fight you, but I think you have the initial power. But I'll leave that to the city attorney.
And he's not here, so.
You can sue anyone, Greg.
Well, no,
You
but
can't
this is not
necessarily
suing,
win.
this is, you're setting regulations by the city. It's not suing them.
Well, but if you set a regulation, you'd have to enforce it.
Yes, I have to have.
And they would not observe the regulation.
Federal and state laws, but.
Right.
yeah,
The
Trump.
trouble we had with the quiet
Right.
zone.
Well, I'd like to, I'd be glad
We
to
have
be
the
your
law on
attorney.
our
I'll be
side.
glad to be your attorney.
Okay.
So we'll leave it at that.
Should we move on to the next one?
Well, we're actually into it, which is the Caltrain update. And we've been bouncing in and out of that. What is the status, Carrie, of any action on the pole height issue?
We're in negotiations, so there are attorneys in the room, and you all know that while you're in negotiations, you can't really talk about it, but I can tell you we're working on it. I can tell you we have a meeting on Thursday. I can't tell you what the outcome will be, but we've been engaged.
Why is it confidential?
Because we don't wanna disrupt what we're doing,
No,
so,
but there's no legal basis for that, is there?
no legal basis.
There's not a lawsuit or anything. It's only confidential. If you
It's-
got a quorum?
It's confidential, but if we sit there and start talking about it, we could destroy the relation,
Isn't that a Brown
communication.
Act
Yeah, like
violation?
No, it's
They
not.
can,
Not a Brown
they
Act
could
issue.
damage their negotiating position,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Sure.
We'll find out
Doesn't
soon
worry
enough.
about
I
this.
think.
Yeah,
We'll find out by Friday.
It's,
Yeah.
Okay.
these
well,
kinds of things
let's
should
all-
not be
let's all
discussed in
patient.
this, yeah.
Who's involved in negotiations? Is it staff? The staff?
Our best negotiator. Me.
Oh, okay.
So I'll change the faces.
But you're doing it alone.
No, George Roderick's in it, and so is,
No, but you're not doing another council member.
no.
All right, well, that's all right. There's you can do it in private if there's just one of them.
And there's staff when necessary. So
Yeah.
Mike Koshwagi
Great,
before
sure,
Robert
great.
came on.
So you get to go in there.
He's getting up to
As
speed.
needed.
Have you got your spurs and all your other weapons ready?
Are you meeting with Hartnett?
No,
Or something below?
I can say it's below his, yeah,
Below his lofty status?
yes.
Yeah.
But we appreciate your effort.
We're working on it, and we hope for a positive outcome.
Fine.
All right, good.
But we'll know by Friday.
Good.
Friday.
You Texas?
Texas time if you want.
No, Texas is a committee.
Oh,
Once you figure out,
Um,
once it's public, I mean,
I think that we will probably have something agendized related to it.
starting
On
next,
your council meeting.
Last February meeting.
Correct.
in, when is it?
Third week.
21st.
Yeah.
My first.
Good, Jim, that's good.
I think, I did mention that, the crossing dividers were being installed in some of the church, by Caltrain. Churchill and East Meadow are two of those that they're putting the extended, median strips to try and take the place of, quad gates.
Oh, so.
But that won't work
Who's
with
doing
all.
it? Is it's Caltrain's project or the cities?
I don't know who is paying for that.
But it's almost there.
Might be the city.
I'm assuming it would be the city, because I haven't heard anything through Caltrain.
It's a Caltrain city project.
Okay.
Well, and I think it's permissible under the rules, so
Yeah.
it works if they can do it. I mean, if they got an intersection, they can do it.
Is this with a quiet zone in view?
Yeah, well, I don't understand how, I understand it would work in one direction, I don't
This is
understand how it works in
to
the
allow
other.
higher speed, it's equivalent of, quad gates.
Yeah, but is this preparatory to get to request a
To
quiet
higher
zone?
speed, yes.
Yes, it's for a quiet zone.
But
And-
feeds ultimately into high-speed rail.
Well, it would
But
also
the-
do quiet zones too, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah, you
The
can do it. without-
Caltrain trains and the high-speed rail trains have to have the same speed if you're ever gonna get them to work on the same track. You can't have different speeds.
You have to have certain, it's not just, if I might just add something. When you get to the dividers, you have to have you have to meet specific criteria. And I don't know if those will meet all of those criteria or
Yeah.
not.
No, I
Yeah,
don't either.
right. So unless they meet a whole slew of specific criteria, they may, unless they do, then it would not be quite its own pre-approval.
Yeah, that's right.
I did want to say that.
So how are they handling Alma Street on the east side?
I don't know. I haven't
He just
seen
knows.
any design work. It was just in the Caltrain update at the Joint Powers Board last.
Well, just for the record, you can't do it at Watkins because of Dinkelspiel, you wouldn't be able to turn left.
That's right.
Right.
So that's why we can't do it, otherwise we could do it on the other side.
Yep.
But
You
well,
would
that's
have-
a
you
thought,
have
maybe
to-
we could just do
no.
half a quad gate.
You have to,
No,
You
that
can't.
won't do
you
that.
have
Why
to,
not?
you would have to
The
close.
FRA says you can.
Because it's,
You would have to close
The-
Dinkelspiel. You
Yeah.
cannot have an intersecting.
Well, no,
road.
I'm not saying,
You would have to close
you
it.
do quad gates on this side of the track,
Yeah.
but on the other side, you
No.
could put in a.
That's where
They would
cannot.
let you
No.
know. Yeah.
No,
No.
that's what I'm saying. It's very specific. It is not take one from column A and one come from column B, throw in column C. No. It is a very specific formula. And that is because, don't forget now, if you meet that specific formula, it's pre-approved. All you have to do is send out your notice of intent, your 60-day comment period, and you get your quiet zone. Once you stray from that very specific formula, then you must formally apply to the FRA and request whether or not you can have a quiet zone, and you must provide the detailed empirical data to demonstrate that this is completely safe.
Well, that's what I'm saying, but you using your own, their regulations, if they allow a median strip on one side
No,
and
I'm just telling
a
you,
double
Greg,
gate on the
you're
other, you
taking-
could prove it safe. You know, it's not a matter of proving a regulation, it's a safety issue.
No,
I mean, from a practical standpoint, I think you're right, but based on the regulations, it just wouldn't pass.
Yeah, but the commissioners are gonna allow it if it's safe. I mean, they're only worried about safety, it's not, they're not worried about meeting the regulations.
Well,
I'm saying,
They're bureaucrats, I don't know
you'd
if
have
they're
to
necessarily.
change
Hey,
the
I was a bureaucrat for many years.
Let's not
We're
undertake that.
here to do justice, we're not here to follow a bunch of regulations.
Before we
yes,
move
you
on-
are. That's the whole point. It's a federal regulation.
Yeah.
That's how we got
No, but
the
if
quiet
you're on the
zone.
FRA, you have the power to override that regulation.
What I just said is, if you take one from column A and you add one from column B, then you need, you, the local authority, you have to formally apply.
Sure.
And then the FRA can say, based on the analysis,
And that's all I'm
they
saying.
can then rule, okay, we're going to grant you a temporary quiet zone for X number of years. That is certainly possible, but that is different than simply going in ahead, meeting the requirements that you need.
Well, I understand, you'd have to get their permission, but I don't see anything wrong with
It's a
asking.
formal
for it.
application
I've
versus.
learned
Well,
politics.
you have to do it first and then.
Oh, no, you'd have to ask first, you
Just
have to spend the money.
Just as a point
Once you
of
got the
order, we can
permission.
talk about quiet zones at another time.
Right.
Yeah.
Maybe during.
I apologize.
Committee and staff. member
I'm
comments.
energized and I don't know why.
And besides, wayside horns would be the cheapest solution, if that's what you're looking for.
Correct.
Say again?
Wayside horns would be the cheapest solution. It would be cheaper than what you're suggesting, which is a quad gate on one side and a barrier on the other.
Well, no, but I'm concerned more with the safety than I am this quiet zone.
I'm still
Because
concerned.
I still think that Dinko
That's a good-
I'm
feel left
still-
turn.
That's a good point.
This is not on the agenda.
Point of order.
Let's move
I
it on.
apologize, Paul.
It is also of interest that Caltrain is putting in a new crossover track at Britton Street in San Carlos, which will allow them to switch tracks with a little more flexibility. Hopefully they keep track of where the trains are. And they're also beginning work on eliminating the holdout for South San Francisco. And I don't know what is involved in that. They're going to have a center platform and they're going to provide underground access for passengers to that platform, apparently. I haven't seen any design on that.
South San Francisco.
Yeah.
We initiated an initial meeting on that effort. We got South San Francisco board members to meet with Caltrains to start to fix those. They did a better job of it than we did in getting it done.
Well, they got the money.
Well, they
Okay,
got
that-
the money, they got clout.
That's all I have on the Caltrain update. Are there any other comments on it?
Paul,
No.
do you
Time for
ask-
public comments, because I
Yes,
wanted to make a
please.
comment.
Please comment.
On the Caltrain issue,
Yes.
my name is Frank Burke from Lloyden Park, and I was asked to attend by Ms. Hume, who couldn't be here tonight. She's the president of our homeowners association. We have, in the last few days, established a modest line of communication with some of the Caltrain board members through a friend, and learned from them that the town of Atherton had sent a proposal on January 29th, and that written proposal, and that something is expected back, and I'm not sure if it's back yet. But part of our message to the Caltrain board, and if anybody at Caltrain is monitoring this video later, I want to assure you that we will continue to bother the Caltrain board with citizen comments, in part because we feel that the tenor and tone of the communications that have been made public in the town of Atherton minutes reveal a mindset from Caltrain of a bureaucratic turf war with Atherton, and that we, the people who live in Lloyden Park, don't seem to be part of their equation. And we will emphasize, and we hope the mayor in his negotiations will emphasize, that this isn't just a bureaucratic battle between Atherton and Caltrain. There's real people in real houses who are citizens who are going to be impacted by this, and that seems to have been completely lost by the staff people. I don't even know if any of these people are actually regular staff, or they're just all consultants who move from job to job to job. But there's no sense in our community that Caltrain cares a hoot about real people. They just seem to be settling old scores with Atherton, and we will continue to keep bothering them with our message until hopefully at least somebody hears it. That's just the comment that I wanted to make, and I wanted the mayor to hear that for purposes of his
Thank you.
discussions, which I understand should be confidential.
Thank you, Frank.
Thank you very much for your comment. We did hear you, and we're in complete sympathy with your position as we've recorded. past
No
meetings.
problems with the rail committee or the town. I think the town and we and the rail committee are completely in sync. It's getting the bureaucracy that Caltrain is to start thinking about real people instead of settling old scores.
Well, that, yes. Thank you very much.
Paul, I have one question for you regarding your agenda item. Can you tell us, was the draft of the business plan adopted formally at the JPB meeting?
Well, the structure of the business plan, no draft has been submitted yet.
Did they vote on the structure?
No,
Oh, they
there was
haven't.
no
I
vote.
see. They were talking about.
It was just an information item.
They were talking about voting on it in February possibly, so I just wondered. Thank you.
Well, it's my sense that the business plan, like many plans, is dragging a little bit.
Thank you.
I don't know that that's true, but I certainly get that feeling. Okay, the litigation update. As you may know, we have a court date for the Atherton lawsuit in Sacramento on Friday, the 16th of February. We have a new judge, Richard Tsuyoshi, at Department 28 there. The scouting that I've heard of suggests that he is a reasonably fair judge, and there's a good opportunity that we might get fair treatment in our case at this time. We're hoping that that's true. What that outcome will be, we won't know until after the judge has issued his findings. My personal belief is that we have a strong enough case that if we do lose, we should have strong grounds for appeal. And the appellate court, the last time we went through them, had some very strong words to say to the High-Speed Rail Authority. So that is an encouraging situation. We talked briefly earlier about the Legislative Audit Committee ordering an audit of the high-speed rail, and I mentioned that the auditor, Elaine Howe, is expected to retire, and we're hoping for a good outcome there. This audit will take 6 to 9 months and cost about $350,000. The terms of the audit are largely focused on money issues, but they seem to allow sufficient magnitude for other issues to be introduced. And the opponents of high-speed rail will be feeding her a great deal of information.
As the legislative committee, in addition to saying there should be an audit, have they defined the objectives and the scope and the elements to be addressed?
Yes, they have some terms for the audit. It's here somewhere. There to review and evaluate the laws, rules, and regulations significant to the audit objectives, review and assess the authority's policies, procedures, and processes for managing contracts and containing costs for the project, including its processes for tracking, reviewing, and paying contractor invoices. To evaluate the authority's process for reviewing and approving design-build contract change orders. To the extent possible, review and evaluate the authority's efforts to determine the economic impact the project has had on communities in those areas where construction is underway. To determine the extent to which the authority contracts with small and disadvantaged businesses, to review the authority's sustainability policy and assess its compliance with the policy, to assess the authority's efforts to evaluate the economic and environmental outcomes of its policy, to determine whether there are opportunities for the authority to expedite the project and reduce costs through cooperation with other transportation entities such as other transit or rail lines, or through capturing additional value through construction of project facilities, and to review and asset any other issues that are significant to the audit.
Well, one issue that I think that would be significant to the audit is the extent to which they're meeting or will be able to meet the requirements of Prop 1A.
There is no mention in here of Prop 1A.
That is no subsidies and time limits on getting from San Francisco to San Jose and San Francisco to LA, and everything that everybody said, neither of those can happen.
Well, that is an issue, Jack, that says turn off the project because it can't work. And that relates to our court case. The audit is an audit of their performance. And I would expect that that would be beyond the scope of the audit, though I agree with you on its importance, but you can't get everything.
Could you update us on the scope of the February 16th lawsuit? I've forgotten about it already.
I don't have a copy of
The
it.
essence of it?
Well, it's basically charging that it is unconstitutional for high-speed rail to transfer money to Caltrain because the money that they have been given through Proposition 1A is for exclusive use of high-speed rail. They have recently come out and said they're going to give $140 million to BART for their new car project, and that would equally be illegal.
Well, I thought there was $1 million out of the, or $1 billion out of the 10 that was for
There were $975
upgrading
million
feeder systems.
for updating other rail system, and that has all been spent.
Okay.
That's gone. The money they're dealing with is high-speed rail money.
So if our position prevails on February 15th, shouldn't that mean that electrification can't go forward because they don't have enough money?
I think that's a distinct possibility. That's part of the intent of the suit. And also that the money could not go to BART and other things that they're handing out money as though they have lots of it and don't care.
Is the BART money part of our lawsuit, or is that separate?
I don't know. I haven't talked to Stu Flashman specifically about that. But I'm sure he's aware of it.
Paul, could you brief us on the meeting this last week? Were you able to attend it?
The JPB meeting? Yeah, but you don't want to hear about it.
Well, was there anything that we should?
There was nothing of real substance.
Wow, that's quite a statement.
Well, you've been to those meetings, Greg. You know what they're like.
Well, usually they have somebody report on the status and stuff.
Well, and the reports they give are all based on schedule. They don't talk ever any technical details. They don't own up to any problems. They merely talk about schedule. The main issue of the meeting on Thursday was this business plan, which has a schedule. I think it's 2 or 3 years to complete. I don't remember the thing.
And this is Caltrans business plan, not?
Yes,
Caltrain.
this is Caltrain.
This is not high-speed rail.
No, this is Caltrain. They're spending $6 million for a business plan.
Regarding their business or regarding the electrification or something specific or something general?
The whole scope of
Caltrans,
Yeah.
okay.
And whether that would do any good if they actually did a good plan, we don't know. That's
So may I answer Greg's question on
Yeah,
that?
please.
So I have attended several of these JPB meetings, and specifically, and I've read through the draft outline of the business plan, and it essentially is three-pronged. And they are looking to define what is their service offering, and going forward, what should that service offering be. And the third major objective of the business plan, which is something I've tried to drive home in the last few meetings, is that recognizing that the assets of Caltrain directly impinge on communities as they are attempting to expand their service. Caltrain says we must, as the third prong of our business plan, work with local municipalities to develop a community interface assessment that will enable us to, Caltrain, to maximize the benefits to the community of the service vision while minimizing and mitigating the direct impacts to the community where the assets impinge on that community.
Wow.
I think that's almost verbatim.
Thank you,
How
thank
do
you.
you remember that? That's amazing.
I've read it enough times because I wanted to be absolutely right. And my point is that that's why it's of great concern to us here, because the question that I raised very respectfully on the January 3rd JPB meeting, I believe it was January 3rd, was, is this business plan to be a valid document that is going to direct the activities of Caltrain moving forward, or is it going to be relegated to mere window dressing in order to pass a ballot initiative to raise the sales tax? Because everyone at Caltrain's JPB believes that this business plan is critical to getting the sales tax ballot initiative passed. Developing a business plan.
They took it off, didn't they?
It's only temporarily taken off. They thought about doing it at the end of 2018. It's just been postponed, delayed.
It's been postponed. They weren't ready.
They
So-
weren't ready yet.
Just to keep focus, the topic is litigation update.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
can we keep on the tracks?
Yeah.
No pun intended.
Thank you.
They want to pass it.
That is.
We're kinda like Trump, we get off the
That is all
agenda.
I have on litigation. Are there any other comments that
I know,
you'd
I
like
was
to
trying
make
to-
about the litigation?
That was
Jim?
Yeah, I think that the hearing that's coming up a week
I
from
know.
Friday is just on our motion to bifurcate one cause of action from the others. Because the first cause of action is essentially that it's unconstitutional for them to be using high-speed rail funds for the Caltrain electrification. And if we win on that, then I think they have to stop using the funds. If we lose on that, then there's maybe still some other questions that could be investigated, but he was trying to bifurcate it so that the judge has a simpler issue to consider. But I think it's just on bifurcation. I don't think they're actually, I think they get a yes or no on bifurcation, then I think they're gonna have to go and plead the issue.
Thank you.
There's a litigator in the room, does that sound right?
Yeah, if I may, a motion to bifurcate is a procedural motion, and if you have several causes of action and you have one that you really want to focus on, bifurcation would enable you to focus on that one, get the judge's attention just on that one, and maybe these other issues would bog that down, and maybe get to a position where you can get a summary judgment or declaratory judgment on that one cause of action, and if whichever way the judge rules, maybe you could get an appeal from that one cause of action without having to worry about all the others.
But
So it should speed up the process and focus it if it's successful.
But most likely, it's just only that issue of bifurcation is all that's gonna be discussed in
Correct.
the first hearing.
Then if you get bifurcation, then you could get a faster track to focusing on the merits of that cause of action and maybe even getting a fast track appeal.
Although, and of course, the high-speed rail's response to our request for bifurcation has been to say, no, it shouldn't be allowed. And their argument, I'm paraphrasing obviously, is essentially that, well, it would be against the public interest to, they don't use the words, but to stop this project now, or to slow down this project. It's sort of the old Willie Brown argument of, you don't know what the project's gonna cost when you start, you just get enough money to dig the hole, and then you have to get more money to fill the hole. Exactly. So Stewart's his reaction was sort of like, so essentially they're saying, it doesn't matter if it's unconstitutional, once we've started, we can't stop because it would be against the public interest. Doesn't sound like a very good argument. We'll see.
Thank you for that, comments.
Are there other comments?
Are we having our member comments at some point here?
Well, we've got one other item on the
Okay.
agenda, and that is something we're going to ask Carrie to present to us, and that's SB 827, Planning and Zoning Transit-Rich Housing Bonus.
So, not that this was my agendized item, but I will definitely tell you that everybody should put this on their radar, because this is a very dangerous
Yes, it is.
proposal related to your proximity from the transportation corridor. So what I suggest is everybody goes to their computer, and I wish I would have, if I would have known, I would have brought, actually had an actual handout. But it is important because it makes it so that there is no more local control when decision-making processes exist related to change in land use. Within, if I'm a little rusty because this has been a few weeks since I actually read it, I think 15 minutes from the actual transportation corridor. So that's a pretty big,
Oh,
you know.
I think it's set forth in terms of distance.
Yeah, that's
One's a
what I
quarter
thought too.
mile, one's a half mile, I can't remember whether it's
That's
a
what
major transit
So
stop.
if
Thank you.
if a property is within a certain distance of a major transportation stop, then the local land use laws don't apply. The state overrides it with its own set, which makes it easier to build. I think you can put in a
Change in land use, correct?
you should put in like the cheap housing or
Right.
affordable,
High
affordable housing.
density, high density,
Cluster housing.
height, the number of stories,
Mhm.
floor area ratio, on parking.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So that applies not only for this Caltrain stop, but also say for
Statewide.
stops on Middlefield, also bus stops on Middlefield and El Camino too. So
Yeah.
it could really apply to
It's got a very
wide
wide,
area.
berth.
Basically all of Atherton.
which
I
means,
knew about the train, but I did not know that applied to bus stops.
There
so,
might be slightly different like or radius that for
Like I
bus
said,
stops.
there's a distance from the stop,
Yeah.
and there's also a requirement on frequency of service, I believe.
Right, every 15 minutes, no greater.
But the
than 15
ECR
minutes.
is
Right.
definitely every 15
which is huge impacts to anything along the transportation corridor, which obviously we would be having a huge impact in Atherton. Because you talk about high density on a residential lot, that now we are no longer restricting its use. The state is saying, hey, wait a minute, I think you can fit low income housing in about 200 units.
Yep.
Oh, and it's close to the Atherton rail station that they just opened? And
What's the subject that we should look up on the
so
chart?
it's Senate Bill 827. It actually just got proposed in January of 2018. So Senate Bill 827. It's on
US
the-
Senate?
Yep.
No,
No, California.
California
Excuse
says,
me.
California.
Yep.
What does the support look like? It was Scott
It was
Wiener's bill.
just, actually, I will tell you, by sheer accident, I picked it up. So it's not as if somebody said, hey, by the way, there's this new, the last person to probably find out is probably gonna be Atherton. Sadly.
Do you know who introduced it?
Wiener.
It was Wiener.
Yeah, it was Wiener.
Yeah.
Sounds right.
So do read it, and I would suggest it comes back to you guys and,
So for a city like San Francisco, which has major transit stops all over, it basically means there's no more land use laws in the entire city, except maybe some really far off place somewhere in the Naval Yard or Hunters Point, but
Little like Merced.
or, yeah, little, yeah.
But San Francisco's,
Well,
some
they,
people refer to it as the Berkeley of the Bay Area.
yeah, but they fight a lot of developers.
Oh, they
So
do.
I'm surprised.
But they're really into transportation. They want
Yes.
you out of your car.
Let me ask a question. It doesn't, it, in terms of land use, doesn't apply to residential housing. It doesn't give somebody the right to put a factory.
No,
In-
it does not have, it's not a change to a commercial designation, in essence, at least that's not what I interpreted. It's to change it to increase the density,
Right.
to get people, in essence, out of their cars, so that, in essence, nobody will ever have a car. They'll just jump on the train or Caltrain or,
This refers to residential developments.
yeah. So it's
So I
huge.
can build a high-rise, low-income apartment house on my property?
Sure.
What if this bill passes?
Huh?
And only apply for a building permit.
Yeah.
I don't think my neighbors
Yeah.
would.
Well, they can't do anything about
Yeah, they
it,
can't
right?
do anything.
Because it would be fast tracked.
It'd be fast track.
You would by right be allowed to do it.
And you could complain about it as your neighbor's doing it too, and you wouldn't have anything that couldn't stop you.
My neighbors don't speak English, most of them are Chinese.
So that's it on that item, but I do suggest that that comes back for a recommendation from you guys.
Yeah, I hesitate strongly to say this, but I think it should be said because it's been on my mind every once in a while since I lived close by, and I would say that I've never taken a poll, but I might be one of the higher users of the station. And I'm not saying I would vote towards an initiative like this, but in living here for now the last 6.5 years, it feels like Atherton gets the downsides of the station, in my opinion, in its current state, outweigh the upside. We get no service at all Monday through Friday. There is a verbal commitment to make it a full service station, which potentially has its own pitfalls. But I think, especially with some of the recent changes, now I can't use it. It's 90 minutes every time that they show up now. We only get service every 90 minutes. It's virtually impossible to use it now. I now use my car all the time. I would sometimes take it to go to downtown Palo Alto, have dinner with my wife. I don't even use it for that anymore. I think, especially given this, Senate Bill 827, it would be irresponsible for us to not do an objective analysis of the benefits of keeping the station.
Keeping what?
The
Keeping
station
the
itself.
station itself.
Actually, thank you for saying that. I was thinking the same thing, and I didn't have the courage to bring it up. But I agree.
And I know there's a lot
Was
of
the word
legacy.
decommissioning or something?
There's, yeah.
Decommission it, or whatever you do, whatever is necessary. Are we in a position to do that?
Well, we're all in hope, Jim is probably.
We could take a position.
That the actual station service ever comes back, and the termination or the actual full service is another question. What's full service? That's because it's not full service of what we will think. It's for full service what works for them,
Yeah.
which is, Thursday afternoon at 3 o'clock, and
Yeah.
we'll drop you off.
But
at
I
6.
also wonder, even if decommissioning happens, will most of Atherton still be in the circumference of the ECR bus stop that comes every 15 minutes? And then I don't know how long the Middlefield, how often that comes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would not be a complete solution.
Yeah.
So, there are some things related to the business plan related to parking that's gonna be an issue in the very near future, because based on ridership, they don't have it in their business plan to create additional parking at any other location. It's overflow, so it's shift and move. So whatever Menlo Park doesn't get, now it's in a different zone. But once you hit Atherton, all parking is supposed to be shifted. So if you're not going to Menlo Park, you're now going to Atherton. If you're not going to Atherton, you're shifting down to Redwood City. So as it overflows.
And then we need parking permits in this area, and
They're gonna have these shuttle buses going back and forth.
yeah.
So you're right, there will be something to consider in the near future.
Yeah.
But I do think that there are some positive changes that will have an impact on that as well.
What was parking like before they shut down?
I don't know either.
Before they shut down service to the station, if anyone's.
It's never really been an issue, and it's deceptive because we have a lot of blacktop that sits over there that actually isn't
Yeah.
theirs.
But
So
the
they-
new Civic Center is gonna remove a lot of the parking, so,
More than a
Correct.
lot, I think.
yeah,
Correct.
yeah.
Well, let me just say on the issue that there are a lot of deleterious aspects to being so close to the train. The noise, the dust, the vibration, the animosity, bureaucratic animosity that gets built up with other agencies and so forth, even neighboring cities, because of our attitude towards the train. But one of the effects of the deleterious aspects is that it decreases the value of your property. If you go out and refinance your house and they go out and they look for comps, they will find a comparable house somewhere. And then they will reach in the air and pull out a number and say that, well, that one's not next to a train, yours is, and so they'll knock off some percentage of the value. I always knew that. I knew when I bought the house, yeah, there's a train there. I had my wife come and visit during the daytime and sit there and see what it sounded like when the trains went by initially. It's a long time ago. But checked it out. And I always felt that, okay, there's some negative aspects to living next to the train, but there were positive ones that for me offset it because I could walk to the train station and get to downtown San Francisco. As long as you don't have service Monday through Friday, you don't have that offset. And if you eliminate service completely, you don't have any offset. So I would not be in favor of closing the station permanently. I would rather try to get service back so we can have some offset. So if you want to sell your house someday, even though there's negative aspects to it, someone who wants to use the train might find it attractive.
Well, if we reacted at the legislature the same way that Lloyd Park has reacted to us, and you could make a lot of noise in Sacramento and get that bill ditched.
So
Well, Wiener also introduced a bill last year that passed that has something to do with, I think it makes it easier to put in accessory dwelling units.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much that affected the town, or if at all. But there was some discussion at a seminar I went to last month, where he was there, and they talked about, he would have made that last year's law a lot stronger if he could have. I suspect that this is probably not gonna go very far, but I don't wanna jinx it by
Who are
saying that.
you listening to?
Wiener and other planners.
Oh, I think there's a good majority of cities that are opposed to the legislation.
Yeah. And you're right, the proximity, are all going to be variables to try to entice people. We all know in this peninsula, the transportation corridor has been a discussion for years, and I think this is a little bit more of a reach that local people will come up and say, whoa, wait a minute, we want local control, we don't want the state coming in and tell us. So, I think that as each jurisdiction, but it's good that it's on our radar, so we can actually get a response from you. Council will get this as a recommendation if you guys have an opportunity to look at it. So then we'll,
Well,
hopefully.
Jerry Hill would be our prime contact.
Yeah.
He's the senator for this area.
So absorb it, make a decision, and we'll write a letter.
Okay.
Okay, that completes our agenda. We have time for committee and staff member comments. Tony?
Nothing for me. Nothing for me.
Chad?
Nothing for me.
Jim?
I just had a comment because I missed the approval of the minutes that Marcio Bromovich's name was misspelled in the minutes, and I gave the correct spelling. Sam.
Thank you.
Palo Alto Menlo Park went over their 2018 council goals, and Palo Alto says one of the 4 will be choosing a grade separation plan this year. And they're being motivated now because Mountain View and Sunnyvale are a bunch ahead of them, and they're all competing for the same Measure B money. And Palo Alto process is slow, but they're afraid they're going to be left out completely. So they're going to have a plan. Whether it's a realistic plan or not is to be determined, but they're going to have a plan. Menlo Park has not included any of their rail plans to be part of the 2018 planning. So they don't see any urgency in doing that. They have other things they're working on. But Facebook actually might be seeing some urgency. So they're actually talking with Samtrans about how they can reopen the Dunbarton Rail Corridor. So they're actually leaving Menlo Park out of the discussion, which kind of surprised their city manager. But we'll see how
Good for them.
they go along with that. You know, they could probably put up a decent amount of money, at least to get from Redwood City to Facebook. I don't know about getting across Dunbarton, but that's to Facebook. There's the half-cent sales tax coming up at the end of this year in San Mateo County, and just looking at what they have planned to spend money on, they're going to propose none of them go to Dunbarton corridor. I don't know if we can ask for any projects, such as quad gates or something like that.
I don't know if the half-cent sales tax is going to fly. I mean, I don't know if they're going to move it forward. I don't think there isn't a final on that, because I think they're a little nervous because the $3 bridge toll component.
That's coming too, yeah.
And they have there are already 2 measures that are already passed, so now it'll be 4 measures all for transportation.
Yeah.
So they're a little nervous.
Well, who's going to blink? I guess that's the question. Cause
It takes 2/3 vote too, doesn't it?
yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's also the Caltrain wants to put on sales tax too.
Theirs is a 0.25%, right?
Quarter percent, and then you've got this half-cent from the county level, and then you've got the bridge toll. I think those are the 3. And there's a question of, is one of them going to blink and say we're not going because there's too many tax bills on there?
So that would put the sales tax at 9.5% if it passed.
If it passed.
And isn't the statutory limit 10%?
No, so they passed the bill so that the
Did
Bay
that.
Area counties could increase the taxes on themselves.
Yeah.
So
But I think it is 9%.
yeah, they raised it so that made this Caltrain tax possible. Also made the half-cent increase possible. And then Mercury News had an editorial that says we should stop HSR. So they've come over and said we're right.
And
Also,
why did they say
the LA
something?
Times has come out against it.
Yeah, right.
Is that right? That's amazing.
Well,
What did the,
come out through with an audit.
Well,
There was
sort of
a
lukewarm.
very negative article in the New York Times, I think it was this morning, about the blight that has been put in the corridor that they own. It has become a complete disaster area with squatters occupying all these abandoned homes and setting them on fire. And some of the people, as they're leaving their property, are burning their houses down, or they give it to the fire department to practice on. And the whole segment, I don't know how many miles it is, 117 miles or something, has just become this blight of just a completely blighted corridor. It's really negative. With no.
Which corridor is this?
It's what exists, what they've condemned out there in the Central
Sounds like
Valley.
just
between Fresno,
Out in.
yeah.
Oh, you mean Central Valley?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
they're sort of, they've essentially taken over,
Yeah.
there's about 500 condemnation lawsuits still pending, but they've taken over about 1,800 parcels or so, and all of those are subject to squatters and burglaries and people coming in and ripping out all the wire and everything, and there isn't really any solution that's proposed by anybody to try to solve this problem in this article, so it's pretty negative, I would say.
Interesting.
Did you have a question, Marissa?
yes, I wanted to ask you, Alex, when the San Jose Mercury News came out, what was their main objection?
Price estimates have gotten too high, and the hard parts are yet to come. There's no money from federal or private sources that look like they're forthcoming. Too many other increasing demands on the budget, including pensions, roads, federal tax shift, and healthcare. And there's always, we've gone a long time with an increasing economy. A recession could come, so it's basically prioritize, and you really don't know how much it's going to cost.
And we can't afford it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the article also mentioned that they don't have the funds to do the easiest section
Yeah,
of the hospital.
because that estimate also came in higher, another $2 billion higher
Yeah,
than expected. So that's all I had.
Craig?
Well, I didn't have anything to start with, but after sitting here for the meeting, I've got 2 items that I'd like to, at least one of them is be the quad gates on Watkins, that we change our approach and try and get a waiver from the FRA to allow a median strip on the east side of the tracks and just put the 2 gates on the west side of the tracks. And if we get that approval, then we could try and raise the money, because it would be half as much. And, you know, based on our cost of what it cost in Fair Oaks, it'd be probably less than $1 million to do half of it. And I would think the city could figure that out with the Caltrains. Because if we put up half, I'm sure Caltrains would match it, because that's what's happened in other cities. So that's one suggestion that I have, and I don't know, without another supporter, I'm not sure where it would go, but I would certainly take the lead on it.
Well, would you like to take the lead and bring a report to our next meeting?
Well, is that the right step?
Yes, we can't take.
Or do we need to get a legal opinion that?
We can't take action on that tonight.
No, I'm not proposing that.
But if you'd like to pursue that, I would certainly encourage you to do that. And check with the regulations, check with Narissa, she knows it book, chapter, and verse.
I have to tell
And
you,
be
I am
be sure that you get it
I
right.
am
Well, I think the city
really
attorney
busy.
should tell us.
I can't get involved in this because I've exhausted that topic. I just can't. I've been working on this other issue nonstop.
Okay.
I've worked on this now, you know, for nonstop here for well over 2 years. I just can't take that on because it's not a simple
I'm not
matter.
suggesting, I'm saying the city attorney's getting paid to do stuff like this, and I think they should.
It is a very technical issue and is very complex. It is not, you know, it takes somebody who really knows the regulation. It is not a simple matter. You have to go out there and start measuring stuff. It's not just a pie in the sky kind of thing, and it's going to take some very serious
Well,
work.
Mikey, Bob could break his teeth in on. Like, I haven't given you my quad. We've been doing this for 10 years, but we do have a quad gate at Fair Oaks, which nobody else on the entire system has.
And that's why we're the only people who have
You're-
applied some.
Your second item, Greg?
The second item is whether we have the legal authority to slow the train down. And I'd like to get a legal opinion on that, if we could get it. Because I can shoot from the hip, but I think if we got our city attorney to look at it, I think we do have the authority. But, you know, others would disagree.
I'm not.
Well, I don't know whether we can, where do we leave that?
The agenda is on the next council.
Well, if you'd like to pursue that, go right ahead.
Well, I'll leave it with our council member. He has the juice with the city attorney, and he pays the checks.
Yeah, executive order, perhaps.
Yeah.
Yes, executive. Oh, you're the mayor? Are you the mayor now?
Malcolm?
Our mayor, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Believe me, this is one of the first things I'll look at.
Okay. Well, you gotta give me a little something to do this month.
Malcolm, do you have a comment?
That's all I have.
Narissa?
I wanted to mention, Mr. Trapuz has made the comment tonight that the plan has always been to find a concessionaire to operate the high-speed rail. I did not realize that. I wanted to just draw a parallel here. As you know, in Denver, which is not high-speed rail, it's commuter rail, electrified commuter rail. They have a concessionaire, and that concessionaire is Denver Transit Partners, of which Balfour Beatty is an entity. Now, it's very interesting. As you know, the manned flaggers are still manning all of the crossings, and it will be 2 years in the middle of April since it's gone operational. So recently, the Regional Transportation District of Denver, which directs the concessionaire, Denver Transit Partners, has gone back to the Public Utilities Commission of Colorado and has asked for the PUC to re-review. They turned it down. What Denver Transit Partners, the concessionaire, wanted was to change the operational criteria for the grade crossings. They wanted to actually change the criteria for operation because they have not been able to meet the criteria for the crossing gates, hence the human flaggers. So the only way that the concessionaire can meet the criteria would be to change the criteria of operation. Now, what did the Public Utilities Commission rule last fall? They said, no, We will not do that, because we fear that it's going to, the delays now are gonna become so long. The gates are down, too long, and we fear that there'll be this aggressive motorist behavior, and people will try to find a way to get on the tracks, outrun the trains. So, the concessionaire, and I point this out, is very interesting. So now what the Public Utilities Commission has done is they have turned this case over now to an administrative law judge. This is a brand new development. They've turned this over to the administrative law judge of the Public Utilities Commission. And what there was testimony by the Regional Transportation District of Denver controlling the concessionaire, and they are, in a sense, threatening the Public Utilities Commission and threatening the state of Denver that it's costing, something's got to give here. You better make some changes here, because the cost is so high to keep up these human flaggers, and you're stymieing other spurs, other sections of railroad which are completed are not being allowed to operate, and businesses that opened up to be around these other electrified lines, they're going bankrupt, because it's now 2 years, approaching 2 years of inactivity. So threats are now being made by the concessionaire that the costs of wanting this kind of safety that was promised by the concessionaire at the time that the Public Utilities Commission gave its approval for development. They're threatening that they, the concessionaires, in a sense, are reaching a breaking point. I just thought I would raise that. It's a brand new development.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's, it shows how things can go when they start going bad, and we've got things that are going bad. Do you have any final words of wisdom for us, Kerry?
Maybe you want to step down as mayor.
Yeah, I tell you, I won't use your suggestions all the time, but, thank you for your comments. I just would like to see that the Senate bill come back to everybody, so you guys have an opportunity. I'd love to hear everybody's comments.
Good.
Carrie, I want to thank you on behalf of all the people who attended the meeting for your leadership on this issue of the polls. You have been an outstanding advocate for the community, and I know it's been very, very difficult for you, but you have the respect of everyone that I've talked to.
Thank you very much.
And I really do hope that we can work together in the future with Caltrain. I think it is going to be extremely difficult to make electrification operable. It's just inherently very challenging, given the lack of other examples of success. And I think Caltrain is going to need the cooperation of all the communities. I do, when it starts to,
Completely agree
when
with you.
things start to become closer to going operational. And I do hope that Atherton can, that Caltrain will come to some kind of agreement with Atherton that will further cooperation, because I think it's in everyone's benefit, not just ours.
I agree.
So I thank you so very much for your leadership.
Thank you very much. And with that?
With that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?